Hi, folks. Thanks for joining me today. Our topic for this training is digital advertising for political campaigns. I'm your host, Colin Delany of Epolitics. And just as I pointed out earlier beforehand, please leave comments in the chat as we go. Very happy to get your questions. I actually learn a good bit from things like this, so I really appreciate it. Um, I learn from your questions as much as you guys can learn from me. So that's pretty cool all around, right? So let us go ahead and dive into the topic, digital advertising for political campaigns. And oh, one more thing, logistically, if you do have to drop off, I will be sending around a link to the YouTube recording of this. So there we are. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm your host. I'm Colin Delany. I have been in the digital politics world since the late 20th century, which boggles my mind. I'm a digital strategy consultant. I work with political groups, some campaigns, nonprofits. I'm an advocate for causes I believe in. I'm the founder of Epolitics, which is now, it has been a website since 2006. It's now a Substack as well. So you definitely want to sign up for epolitics.substack.com. Thank you. And then, as you see to the right, every election cycle, I update an ebook about digital politics and advocacy, a how-to guide, and it is the most comprehensive overview of how digital politics is done that I'm aware of. And I'm starting to work on the 2025 edition, so we will see how that goes. It is always a joy to try to catch up with what's happening out there. And I also play rock and roll, or play in a kick-ass rock and roll in DC, rock and roll band in DC. So, as a consultant, I help groups with a little bit of everything because I've been doing this for so long. I've been lucky enough to work on a lot of different projects, digital advertising, of course, but also top-level digital strategy, grassroots mobilization strategies, social media, email list growth, all kinds of things like that. So if you ever want to follow up, my contact information will be at the end here. So I got started a long time ago in Texas politics in the early 90s. And in Texas, politics is played as a contact sport. I worked in the legislature for a member of the Texas House, and you just see up close and personal how policy is actually done, including the very personal aspects of it. I shan't tell any stories today, but catch me after a couple of drinks. But I think you pick up if you work in a state ledge office or a city council member's office or a mayor's office. I think you just naturally pick up a pragmatic approach to politics, and I think you'll see that going through this presentation as we go. So, if we were live together in a room, this is where I would start asking y'all questions. Why do we advertise online? Get lots of different answers. But basically, we advertise online because that is where the people are. And we want to be where the people are. One of the problems with Democratic political campaigning over the last few years is that we stuck with a bunch of strategies that worked very well 10 years ago and still work well doing what they do very often. But because the way that the internet has shifted and the way online audiences have shifted, we're beginning to miss a lot of people. So this presentation will look a little bit different than it might have 10 years ago, and not just because things like TikTok now exist. So, but we advertise because we want to reach people where they are, where they get their information nowadays. And so typical goals, build lists. If you're running down ballot, especially, name recognition may be one of the most important things. But to recruit donors, raise money, recruit volunteers, again, particularly important for down ballot candidates. Sell merch, get people to events. You may just want to highlight news stories, particularly if you're an issue advocacy group. But to reinforce fundraising, you might advertise at your own list at the same time that they are receiving your fundraising emails, hoping to boost the performance of those fundraising emails. Similarly, you might advertise to folks before field organizers are going to contact them, hoping to sort of lay the groundwork, prime the pump, make the folks aware at least that you exist, your campaign exists, your issues exist before someone tries to talk to them. And of course, persuade voters, particularly likely voters. Persuading people who aren't going to turn out is probably not as good a use of your money, but you may want to find voters. You'll probably be doing a lot of get out the vote among people who are likely to vote for you, but who may need that extra nudge. And going all the way back to 2008 and 2012, those were the Obama campaign's highest priority targets. And I'm sure they are highest priority targets for a lot of you out there too. Sometimes, though, your goal is just to sow dissent. This is an actual piece of content that, so the Russians, was the Internet Research Bureau, whatever they called it back in 2015, 2016. This was a piece of content the Russians were putting out. I, for one, am a big fan of mullet Jesus. Yeah. So sometimes you may not have quite the same goals as traditional political communicators. But in any case, advertising may help. So here are a bunch of different ads, from banner ads to Google content ads to obviously some Facebook there. And a lone banner ad to the right from Martin O'Malley way back 10 years ago. But it's a good example of the size of big fat web banners. This would have run on like news sites and other content sites. So I want to highlight a particular kind of ad first. Now, this is really a way ads are distributed. It is called programmatic advertising, and different kinds of ads. Video ads can be targeted this way, streaming TV ads can be targeted this way, and as you can see down there at the bottom right, banner ads can be targeted this way. But basically, the process works that every time you go to a content website, a sports site, a fashion site, or you're using an app that has ads, or you're watching a streaming TV channel that's supported by ads, when that ad is going to pop up, basically a bidding process happens in milliseconds behind the scenes to decide whose ad gets shown. So and there are a lot of political vendors who have connected the voter file to these kind of programmatic systems. It's called programmatic because basically software is doing the bidding behind the scenes. So the ads are placed automatically. You, the advertiser, choose who you're trying to reach. But the system then goes and finds those placements. So if the person you're trying to reach is using a game app, a game on their phone, they might see an ad there. If they're watching streaming TV, they might see an ad there. If they're watching a video on a website, your ad may pop up in front of that website. Now note that these are out on content sites and apps. They are not on social sites. They're not on TikTok. They're not on YouTube. They're not on Facebook and Instagram. But they're a great way to reach voters very precisely and can help you stretch a budget. And we're going to talk about the different kinds of programmatic ads. But this is the concept that you're targeting the voters. And many, many vendors are out there. I've been using DS Political's deploy system for several years, but there are many, many vendors out there that would be happy to sell campaigns programmatic ads. So just with that sort of background there, there's Martin O'Malley again. Let's take a quick look at different flavors of digital ads. We obviously are not going to be able to go into a tremendous amount of detail about all of these, but we can at least touch on them. And you can see that this is a pretty overwhelming list. And this is one reason we work with vendors and consultants who can help us narrow it down. The basic idea, though, is that if you don't have a whole lot of money, you really need to pick a group of voters and focus on them. That if you spread your money out too far, you're not going to reach anyone enough times for it to matter. So I'm typically trying to target a voter these days 20 or 25 times, right, to have a chance for my message to begin to break through. So we're going to look at a couple of sample budgets in a minute, and you'll see that in action. So web video ads, these used to mostly be pre-roll. They would run before content videos on websites, but they now also appear in a lot of phone apps as well. Last time I ran quite a few ended up on a So last time I ran CTV ads or web video ads, quite a few of them ended up on a T-Mobile content system. Basically, it was a content platform. It was a way that T-Mobile users were able to watch TV and movies, and our ads were popping into the middle there. But then there's CTV, which is streaming. Not every streaming platform is on programmatic. Some of them, vendors have to buy from directly, but plenty of them are. This is a relatively straightforward way for digital campaigns to bleed over into television. 3 or 4 years ago, CTV was new and kind of edgy. Now it's quite commonplace. There's a ton of ad inventory out there. The advantage is, of course, it shows up on a big screen. The disadvantage is that it costs a lot more than something like web video. And just like web video, it can be targeted programmatically. So I can go to a platform and say, I need to reach women over 55 in, state legislative district 23 in, Texas, and go from there. And the CTV vendor will then connect to the commercial advertising networks and try to connect with my targets in a cost-effective way. Similarly, banner ads, classic, been around since the beginning of the visual web. Basically, I was building banner ads in the late '90s. So banner ads are also targetable programmatically. They are typically going to be less effective than web video or CTV, but they're also a lot cheaper. And they can get you a lot of touches on voters, particularly important for name recognition. They can get you a lot of touches with voters for a relatively small amount of money. And I will note that all of this is going to be more effective if you are if it is not the only thing that you are doing, right? You typically want the same people who are seeing your digital ads to be getting your direct mail, to be getting phone calls from canvassers, to be getting visits from canvassers. Hopefully, they'll also be hearing about you through their friends and family. Right. So all of these none of these is a magic bullet. Each of them is potentially part of a balanced breakfast. So we've talked about the programmatic, Facebook, Instagram. Many of you, I'm sure, have already run these. Facebook particularly, tends to get an audience that is older, a little whiter, and female. But depending on where you're running the ads, that may be different. And we'll talk about different targeting options for that. Usually, you're going to be buying Facebook and Instagram together, and Meta is going to show the ad to your target based on what they're looking at. Now, and Facebook and Instagram can be targeted to lists of people, so you can target them to voter file exports. Although you better have a phone number and an email in there, or you're going to have very low chance of actually matching somebody. YouTube does not, just like other Google properties, they do not allow that kind of one-to-one targeting. I cannot just target a group of voters on YouTube, but YouTube is a massive platform with a huge reach, and it can be relatively cost effective. And you, of course, can do things like zip code targeting on it. So I may not be able to target quite as cost effectively on YouTube, but it may still be a good investment if I have a big enough budget. And like I said, we'll see some budgets in a minute. Google search, very common. You can also try the expanded Google Content Network, depending on whether political ads are allowed on it at that moment. But most often campaigns are going for search. Probably want to run search ads on your candidate's name and on your opponent's name. Try to catch people when they're interested in your opponent. Media websites, especially local websites, we'll look at some examples of that in a little bit, but these can often be quite cost effective. And you can do things like take over the whole front page, basically every ad slot on a local media website the first day of early voting. But you would, in a case like this, some of those ads may be programmatic and may get served. Your ads may serve on those media websites simply because you're buying ads targeting people, but you can also go directly to the websites. There's LinkedIn, particularly good for targeting people in different professions. I do a training every year for doctors who may run for office, and for people, doctors, engineers, teachers, nurses. LinkedIn may be a good way to reach out more to grass tops support. and you can target by profession on LinkedIn. Sponsored content, this is content that is running on a media website that may look a lot like a news story, but isn't actually a news story. And you can also run these on email lists and specialized publications. Again, you're probably going to have to reach out to these individually, but you can be looking for publications, Substacks, other mailing lists that either potential donors be paying attention to, or priority groups of voters in the area where you're running a campaign. And then activist communities, Daily Kos on there has been around for well over 25 years, or 20 years now. Care2 has been around for a very long time. Civic Shout. In cases like this, you're either running, a Civic Shout is newer, but is gaining on Care2 very fast. These are places that have already gathered a lot of like-minded people, and you can basically pay for the opportunity to dangle your content in front of them. So perhaps you're going to run a sponsored petition on Civic Shout or Care2, or you're going to run an ad pointing to an advocacy action on Daily Kos. But a lot of political campaigns have used these platforms like these to particularly recruit donors over time, since, of course, you have plenty of activists there. Nowadays, you may be paying attention to podcasts, and there are platforms out there that will let you buy podcast advertising. You can, though, you can also reach out directly to podcast hosts, podcast production companies, perhaps as you're trying to pitch your candidate or your cause for an appearance. You might also look at buying some ads. Digital radio, it can be great, again, highly targetable, but it can be hard to get repetition with digital radio to have the ad actually appear enough times. So that would be a question to ask, Spotify or Pandora or whoever you're talking to. But so digital radio probably going to work best alongside other tools. Influencer marketing. Wow, this really does get complicated. Influencer marketing here, I'm talking more about paid influencer platforms. And you may want to again reach out organically to these folks, but if there are places like Social Current, that's CURRANT, People First, Vocal Media is another one, so that's Social Current, People First, and Vocal. These all have built up networks of influencers, often local influencers, that you can pay through these platforms. You can pay to distribute your content, and you're going to ideally try to align with someone who is cares about your candidate or your issues before you start giving them money. But the nice thing about working through one of these paid platforms is you typically are going to get distribution numbers and a sense of how well your content performed and who it reached. Twitter X, I don't think Democratic campaigns are going to be paying a ton of attention to that right now, but it may still have a place for some issue advertising. But again, I don't want to give Elon Musk any more money than most of you want to give him any more money either. So the last one I'm going to put on there is digital out of home. Now, this is digital billboards. This is the little screens that are in gas stations, on the gas pump. They can be, again, highly targetable, geo-targeted. And with companies that know who their customers are, I think it is possible to even do some kind of programmatic level targeting, but I may be wrong on that, so don't quote me. So before we dive into more, let's look at a couple of budgets. So let me check the comments real quick just to see if anyone has questions yet. So someone has a question about the band. He's in DC May 7th and 8th. They're playing that. No, unfortunately, I am helping my mom down in Texas. I'm in Texas right now. So alas, manic obsession, you will have to catch a different day. But thank you for asking. So one crucial factor about the kinds of ads you run and where you're going to run them and who you're going to be targeting and all of that is when you're doing it. And the earlier you can get started, almost always the better. There's a little Amy Klobuchar search ad over there back from 2020. These search ads are often one of the first things people get up. It's a way to start collecting donors, volunteers, other people who are interested. It can also catch people like journalists or activists or bloggers when they are interested, or if they're taking a look at your race, you can have a chance to try to capture them then. And as I mentioned earlier, you're probably going to want to run these search ads on your opponent's names as well. So, but early on, we're usually trying to build name recognition, of course, build fundraising lists, start to raise money, recruit volunteers, sell merch, and then get people to events. So I will say the Republicans, particularly, the Trump campaign, have been very, very good at getting the merch out there. Raises a lot of money, and it has gotten, their messaging out there, their logo, his name in front of a lot of people. So, it may be something to think about. Not going to be a good fit for everyone, of course, but one never knows. So we have a couple of questions here popping up. Oh, someone has to leave, unfortunately. The video you will be getting a link to. So this is early on. We are campaign launching. Now we're mid-period. So, maybe this is a couple of months out before the election or 3 months out before the election. Here, we're building that name recognition. We're still building the fundraising list. We're still raising money. We're going to be pushing the volunteers, but we are also going to be trying to build your campaign's brands, your candidate's name recognition, the opinion people have of your campaign with specific slices of the electorate. And if you're going negative, you may be going after the opponent. Or if you're, an IE or something supporting people, you may well be going after the opponent. But supporting field organizing, supporting fundraising, by now your folks, if have any kind of grassroots component, your folks ought to be knocking on doors. And so, like I mentioned earlier, if the targets of your outreach can see content from you before the field organizer knocks, the field organizer may have an easier time. And similarly, we may be sending out fundraising ads at the same time that we're targeting those same people with direct mail or email fundraising appeals. And then finally, we're getting down to GOTV. So the video and banner ads are really pushing name recognition among likely voters, right? Now, you may exclude conservatives from this so as not to waste your money, but especially if you are down ballot, having someone recognize your name may be the most important, part of standing out in a crowded field, right? You're again targeting your likely supporters who need a push, raising money, still recruiting volunteers, still getting people to events, and still reinforcing field outreach. But this is the final crunch. Unfortunately, Democratic campaigns, the last since 2016, really have not been getting, according to folks I talked to at least, have not been getting as early a start on field. I do hope that situation is changing. A whole lot of money and time gets dumped into campaigns in the last month and a half. And a lot of times that money and time would be better spent in the summer or the spring. So if you can get your funders to fund things like field outreach, recruiting, persuasion ads, you may well be able to get them far cheaper in the summer than you could in the fall, and they're likely to stand out a lot more. If we try to persuade people at the last second, we're not giving ourselves enough time to do it, and we're probably paying a premium because everyone else is trying to do the same thing at the same time. So money, campaigns with big budgets can do everything. I have a friend who teaches a TV advertising training every year, the same time that I do a digital training. And one of his lines is, "You are not a presidential campaign," unless you are, of course. But presidential campaigns, top level statewide campaigns, they can be just about everywhere. Most of us are not that lucky. So with lower budget, particularly down ballot campaigns, we're going to focus on the basics, not the bling. So let's look at a couple of budgets here. So this is two digital budgets that I just kind of made up. Although the one on the right, or the left rather, the $10,000 budget is pretty much what I did with a candidate who was running for county council in Prince George's County, Maryland. And she got 48% of the vote, I believe, in a six-person field and will be the next delegate. So I don't think the digital did it for her on its own. She had a terrific field campaign, but I don't think it hurt either. So in this case, I think the closer you are, the further you are down ballot, the bigger a part of your budget something like Facebook, Instagram is likely to be, because it is easily accessible, and because again, this is local. Many of your followers are going to be, in your targeted district in the area where you're running, so they can see your ads and amplify your content, and you get that sort of social validation, that social boost, but also it's accessible. So here I have 3,500, about a little over a third of the budget on that, a little over a third of the budget on streaming, and less on web video. Now, 5 years ago, I probably would have had a lot more on web video, and we would have had some banners. But CTV streaming, because of that huge screen, because we're basically getting on TVs, I'm going to put more of the money into that nowadays. And with the web video, also, CTV and web video, both programmatically targeted, I can reach very specific segments of voters a bunch of times. With Facebook, Instagram, I'm probably going to be doing a mix, some that is just geo-targeted, zip code targeted, but I will probably also be targeting van exports, my own supporter list, things like that. Now, you look at the $100,000 budget, we're still spending a lot on, and again, your mileage may vary, right? Your particular circumstances, the people you are trying to reach will determine, far more than some generic list like this. But the Facebook and Instagram here, it's still sizable, but it's down to a quarter of the total. I've put more into CTV. CTV is more expensive, but since I have a bigger budget, I can make it a bigger chunk of the budget. And I've, for the same reason, kind of demoted web video as a percentage. It's cheaper than CTV, but we assume less effective. So if I have enough money, I'm going to put far more of it into the CTV. With banners, this is a very small amount. You may well want to put more in than this, but the banners are again mainly going for name recognition, and they are relatively cheap and show up in lots of places, but people don't always notice them. So again, part of a balanced breakfast. And then here I put a bunch into YouTube just as an example, knowing that YouTube is not as well targeted. I cannot target individual voters, but it is still such a powerful platform. But notice that there's nothing for YouTube at the $10,000 budget, because that little rule of thumb, find a place that you can saturate and then saturate it and then move on, right? So here we've got Facebook covered, we've got CTV and web video covered, and so we have money left over that we can put into YouTube. Now, again, like I said, your mileage may vary. This may be totally different in your particular circumstances. So let's pause for a second. I don't see any new questions now. I hope this is hitting the mark, folks. We are about a half an hour in, so let me go ahead and get moving. So where do ads come from? Well, one day the robots may just create them all for us. But right now, we do have a question popping up in the chat. Let's take a look. Oh, thanks. I love seeing your budgets. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I moved those higher up in the presentation this time because I thought people would really want to get a sense of that. So content can come from a lot of places. Sometimes drink beer, just to the right. Internal brainstorming within your group. I used to get interns together with pizza to get them to come up with ideas. But graphic designers, video designers you work with may have really good ideas. Similarly, vendors and consultants, they have the opportunity to see what is working with a lot of different groups and may be able to make a big difference for you. Similarly, partners may be providing content. Other external sources, like for instance, drawing from a stock photo library or a stock video library. And then AI, potentially. You can get some weird results with AI, but I have a funny feeling that more and more of our video content and our still image content is going to be AI generated in the future, for better or for worse. And you, of course, if you're doing anything in AI, you want to check the results very, very carefully so you don't end up with people with too many fingers, or blatant lies included in there. And I'll also note that platforms like Facebook now require you to say if your content was AI generated. Now, nothing requires you to fulfill that requirement, right? But they certainly want you to. So content comes from a lot of places. How do we buy our ads? Well, often you're going to work through a vendor, someone like me or someone like, there are many, many folks out there in the field, many really good consulting shops, some others that are not as good, but unfortunately, it's kind of hard to know who that is in advance. So, the more you can talk when you're picking a digital consultant or picking a digital ad vendor, you want to talk, if possible, with other people who have had experience with them. But then there are plenty of self-serve platforms. Many of you, I'm sure, have bought Facebook and Instagram ads. You might have bought LinkedIn ads. You might have bought Google ads or Snapchat. Or for a commercial, marketer, non-political, you might have bought TikTok ads. Unfortunately, TikTok does not take paid political content at the moment. We'll see what happens down the road. But for programmatic ads, a platform specifically for Democrats, it comes from DS Political, is called democraticads.com. So even small campaigns, city council or school board can go in and use the templates that are hosted on the website to create banner ads, video ads, and even CTV ads, and buy them with the same kind of precision that you can get from other programmatic ads. So again, you may well, this is a lot for a campaign itself to do, but your digital consultant, may be able to do that purchase for you, or, they may be working through a self-serve platform like this themselves. But so that is where ads come from, and that is how we buy ads. I keep this, a friend of mine get rid of these slides, but I keep them because they illustrate a very important point. Landing pages are the unsung heroes of digital advertising. The ad starts the process, but the landing page seals the deal. And that Hillary ad was obviously from before the first Democratic debate, I assume late 2015. Over there on the right, the top image was the landing page you would go to when you clicked on the ad. Notice same look, same font, same font all around, but it's basically the same photo and same colors, same basic vibe. The photo or the screen captured to the bottom right was what the campaign's default sign up page looked like at the time. So they had custom landing page designed for this particular Facebook ad. And it's quite possible they might have had different Facebook ads tied to different landing pages out there all at the same time if they were testing which images were going to perform best. So it's an example of the ad starting the process and then the landing page echoing the ad so that people are reassured that they're sort of in the same content stream. But another thing to point out about the landing pages in general is how stripped down they are. You don't want to give people too many options. That H up at the top probably links back to the main campaign homepage. But the more options you give people, the more likely they are going to not do what you would prefer that they would do. In this case, they might click on a link rather than signing up. So don't let the landing page be an afterthought. Okay, so we're covering a lot of ground really fast here. I really appreciate all y'all's patience. So let's talk targeting real quick, and I'm going to go into these in a little more detail individually, but geo-targeting, interest targeting, demo, custom audience targeting, voter file targeting, and these two go hand in hand a lot, custom audience and voter file, and then targeting based on behavior. So let's break it down a little bit. So geo-targeting in politics, obviously, you are typically going to be running ads in the district where you are running. Now, if you're trying to reach donors statewide or nationwide, that may be an exception to this policy, but certainly for GOTV and most persuasion, you're going to be going local. So it may be by city, county, state, by district lines, by zip, or perhaps you have an event and you want to run mobile ads targeting people who are around where the event is going to be. You might work with a vendor to geofence an arbitrary area. I worked on a project years ago that was trying to recruit whistleblowers around human trafficking, drug smuggling, tariff evasions, that kind of thing. We were targeting ports like the port of Long Beach, New Jersey, and Houston, places that were very active commercial ports. So we geo-fenced around each of those ports and ran banner ads at them. Did not work as well as one might have hoped, but asking someone to become a whistleblower is a huge ask anyway. But it's just an example of what you can try. So geo-targeting, also demographic targeting, age, race, gender, voter status. Now, the programmatic platforms that you're going to use for politics are going to typically, they're going to have a voter file that has all of the usual data appended to it. So I can use that to do a lot of things. I might target Black women over 40 with a particular piece of content, a particular content ad, maybe a messenger that I think is going to resonate particularly well with them. May target over 40 with one ad and then target people under 30 with a different ad. You can, again, gender, voter status, being registered versus non-registered, voting propensity. Many of you, I'm sure, will have worked with this, but this is someone's modeled likelihood of voting. The partisan score, their modeled likelihood of voting Republican, Democrat, or going back and forth. And another one that can be useful is their digital consumption. If you have a limited budget and you need to restrict your audience one way or another, you can try excluding people who have a low digital consumption rate because they're not going to see your ads very many times anyway. Whereas someone with a high digital consumption score is more likely to see your ads enough time for them to actually break through. Now, for things like Facebook, obviously you target like age and gender and location, but targeting something like voter status or voter propensity, you can't do like directly. But if you have access to the van or access to some other source of voter data, one of TargetSmart's pre-prepared Facebook audiences, for example, you can target based on these things by doing an export or basically an upload to Facebook. So I find the people I want to reach in van, export that list, upload it to Facebook. Again, you have to meet the matching criteria very carefully. If someone uses a different email address on Facebook than exists in the voter file, you're going to have a much harder time matching them, things like that. But it is one way to get around Facebook's limitations on the fun we can have with micro-targeting. So this gets us into this specific targeting. Custom audiences, there's a little screenshot of a spreadsheet over there. That was a list of targets from 2023, it looks like. So you might be getting your targets from data models from a vendor, from a voter file. It could be, you may be getting a list of past donors from another campaign and you want to upload and target that as a donor list. You do not want to email a purchase list because you're liable to end up in spam jail. But you can certainly use a purchase donor list as a target for digital ads on something like Facebook and Instagram, or use it as a basis for a lookalike audience and then do the targeting through that. But many, many, many different platforms will take an uploaded or imported list, including plenty of programmatic platforms. So you could take the list of voters you're targeting with for door knocks or for phone calls and upload that same list to Facebook and to your programmatic platform and hit them multi-channel 24 hours a day wherever they happen to be looking. So that is custom audience. Now, behavioral targeting, we can do a lot of things, but I want to specifically mention retargeting. If you remember the Zappos ads from 10, 12 years ago, if you went to zappos.com to look at shoes, the ads would basically appear everywhere you went online, it seemed, for the rest of time. That's an example of behavior-based retargeting. But you can use it for a lot of different things. If you install Facebook Pixel on your website, you can, for instance, set up an event to track when someone goes to your main donation page and then when someone goes to your thank you page. So if someone goes to your donation page but does not end up on your thank you page, that's an example of someone you may want to target with a follow-up ad. They started the donation process, but maybe the phone rang or they got a text message, or the kid started screaming, right? So they ran off to do something else. So you may find good results targeting them based on that bit of behavior. And the lightning is there because, yes, sometimes lightning does strike twice with retargeting for sure. But way back in 2016, the Trump campaign ran Facebook content on a vast scale. Many more content variations, up to 100,000 a day or more, many more variations than Facebook will allow you to do nowadays. But as people engaged with that content, the campaign had automated systems set up that would turn around and feed them ads based on what they had engaged with, and then tried to recruit them to follow the campaign and become donors. They, sort of the word of mouth was that the Trump campaign had raised a lot of money on Facebook. Really, they'd recruited a lot of donors on Facebook and then raised money from them. But a lot of that was an example of behavioral targeting and retargeting. Woo! We've covered a lot, so we're going to cover more now. Let's look at the trade-offs between different um, kinds of ads and when you would go for each one. So video ads, programmatic, CTV, programmatic web video, CTV and streaming. As you've said, they can be good for persuasion and name recognition, and even for GOTV. You certainly want to be blanketing people because these are so targetable down to the voter file. Web video ads may be relatively affordable. You don't have to jump through the kind of hoops. You don't have to get verified on Facebook. You don't have to get verified on, the way you do on Facebook or Google. They don't seem to work as well for fundraising or direct response. They are easy to get a lot of repetitions on. So, a social platform might throttle how often your ad will appear, but with programmatic, you can often go, a lot more often. And then we can compare that to YouTube as well. YouTube is specifically reaching the YouTube audience. These are, pre-roll videos or interstitial videos. They run either during or between videos. But as I mentioned earlier, we cannot do the same kind of voter file one-to-one targeting on YouTube. So if I, am trying to persuade a particular group of voters, I'm going to try to go programmatically usually first, because I know that I can target it and I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, but then add YouTube on if I have the additional budget. So social ads, again, audience building, engagement, keeping your supporters active day to day, targeting across all of the different ways that Facebook will let us target, including interest targeting, what people care about to a certain extent. There's a lot of less of that than there used to be, but you can still even target things like activism, unless it's gone away in the last couple of months. You could target things like activism as an interest and try to recruit potentially, donors or volunteers in a given area. Social ads can be useful for fundraising. Many Democratic campaigns will run lots and lots of Facebook ads out there. Usually in a case like that, you're trying to target a list of known donors or a lookalike audience based on known donors. But some groups do, go out and just try to new fish into the pond by going beyond those sort of circumscribed limits. And it's also very good social ads for featuring volunteers and supporters. I wish more campaigns would do this, but a supporter telling his or her story about why they're involved or why they're volunteering or what this election means to me. You want a potential voter or another potential volunteer to be able to see themselves. Now, social ads, they have not as probably cost effective as they were 8 or 10 years ago. We've mentioned the difficulties getting, a good match to the voter file, limits on repetition, the political verification issues. So, social ads, again, not a panacea, but a good part of that balanced diet. You want to fit them in. They're good for additional touches on people that you're reaching through other channels. And, there are plenty of people who still are going to spend the majority of their online time on Facebook and Instagram, and you want to be able to reach them. So let's look at streaming OTT versus web video, zeroing in on the video here. Programmatic web video, reaches people on many websites and apps, I have to point out. The completion rates are lower. It's a lot more cost effective, or it's cheaper, let's say, than streaming ads. But you're also smaller screens and a little easier to skip. Where the streaming ads are almost impossible to skip usually. The only way you can really skip it is to exit the app. They're viewed in the middle of something that they're interrupting someone while they're watching a show. So they may be far more likely to pay attention. They're often viewed on larger screens, but they are more expensive. Now, some vendors will show you prices lower than this, but I definitely want to check the inventory because there is showing up on some crap app that does not have a good completion rate is not going to be as good as showing up on a more premium streaming channel. So again, you're probably going to do these side by side. And one of those reasons is that people consume information in different ways. Yes, a whole lot of us are on streaming, but not every one of us is on streaming, right? A whole lot of us use a lot of web apps, games and such, but many others don't. So you want to run these things together to give you the best chance of reaching the voters or donors that you need to reach in the media that they're using at that moment. So one last little how to choose thing here. Search ads, good for targeting people when they're interested in a subject. You can get a rapid response ad out to capitalize on something that's in the news. You can run ads on the opponent's names, and you might take a look at the Google Content Network. Although if you're doing programmatic ads, you may not really need to do that. But here in Texas, where I'm helping out my mom for a while, I have seen a good number of local candidates ads out there on the Google Content Network. So one never knows. And then podcasts, niche publications, sponsored content, influencer marketing. This is getting a lot of emphasis these days. They're good for reaching these specific audiences. Now, most of us aren't going to end up on Joe Rogan, but we might be able to buy ads on a system that is placing ads on Joe Rogan's show. But of course, getting an interview in someone's Substack or going on someone's YouTube channel is going to get you more exposure than an ad will do, of course. But if you do that appearance and the person sees an ad, the viewer sees an ad, they may well be more likely to respond to both. And so these may be particularly cost effective for recruiting donors, depending on the publication that you choose. So these aren't quite as turnkey, although Social Current, Local Media, People First that I mentioned earlier are right there on the screen. They're going to be happy to connect you with influencers. But if you're running in a particular area, start asking the voters there, start asking the people you need to reach what they listen to. And you may get good ideas for local niche media that you could reach out to and do an organic appearance or perhaps buy an ad. So, we have covered a lot of ground in a short time. So let us check. Oh, alas, someone else had to hop off early. But we are the noble survivors right now. And so if you have questions that have come up, please drop them into the chat there. So some good practices: tailor your presentation to the medium. TV ads don't work as well on web video or even on CTV or on Facebook. TV ads can have a slow build, but in digital advertising, that is often the kiss of death. If someone doesn't connect with your video or it doesn't grab their attention in the first couple of seconds, very often it may as well not exist. So look at other content on that medium, look at what is working for other groups, but definitely, and there are plenty of best practices guides out there. But yeah, don't just port a TV ad over to the web and expect it to work as well. As a presentation I saw recently said, people in focus groups, for example, are paying a lot more attention to the ads than someone who just sees them online or on TV is, right? So something that focus groups well may not actually work well in practice because the focus group is paying attention and normal people aren't, right? So repeat, repeat, repeat. We are trying to hit people a lot of times. In the old days, it was, I need 15 times. Now, maybe it's 25 or 30 times. And as we've said, hitting the same message or the same basic content through different channels helps to reinforce it. Appeal to emotion, dry content. Now it can with certain audiences, particularly with certain influencer audiences, right? If you're try to get on Paul Krugman's Substack, that's going to be a little nerdier than the average, but usually emotive appeals work. Faces, think about the visuals, think about how you're going to grab someone's heart rather than their head, and when possible, speak at the level of values. Democrats, in particularly, are really bad at are really bad about laundry listing. If you remember the Clinton era, all of his public speeches were a laundry list of policies. When possible, though, try to appeal to deep values, deep American values, patriotism, caring for one another, things that transcend policy and speak to the heart. And reach people different ways, experiment with targeting options. We've covered a lot of different options there. And look at what your cost per acquisition or your cost per contact is, but monitor your ad delivery. I cannot overstress this one. It is very easy to forget to put an end date on an ad campaign and suddenly find that you have spent $1,000 instead of $100. It's also easy to create ads, assume they're running, and realize way too late that something went wrong. So, and Facebook may or may not have sent you an email about it, right? So, keep an eye on the ad delivery. Make sure that that things seem reasonable, and definitely make sure that they go off when they need to, turn off when they need to. So testing is a quick example. This one, testing can help you find effective content. Digital advertising naturally lends itself well to this. In this case, I was testing two different bits of text for recruiting ads for a wind energy Facebook page. And you'll see the one on the right for the same budget reached a lot more people. So, and this was something that we found the jobs message really did work well with alternative energy. So that's just something. Let's look at some list building options here. Of course, you can always link to a petition through an ad. This was a Facebook ad from a few years ago, linking to a Democratic National Committee petition. And this, many organizations do this kind of thing, linking over to a petition, sending people there from a large number of different places, particularly from social, but you may be doing it from other channels as well. But something like Facebook also has a native tool called lead generation ads that are specifically designed to get people to sign up for things, right? It's designed to generate sales leads. So instead of linking out to a petition, the ad will actually direct someone to a form that is inside Facebook, and it will bring over information like their name and their email address and their cell phone. So it speeds up and eases the process of someone signing up for your list. Now, sometimes it turns out that just linking to a petition is more cost effective. Often it'll turn out that using a lead generation ad is more cost effective. If you're running a lot of ads like this, in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, you may want to test side by side and see whether the petition link does better than the lead gen ad. I'm running some lead gen ads right now, by the way, for a freeze the rent petition for a New York City tenants' rights group. And in this case, we're targeting a lookalike audience based on people who had already signed the petition, and it's doing very, very well. So lead gen ads can be cost effective, but again, if you're doing high volume, you may want to test. But another option for list building like that could be activist communities. Here is a Save the Children Action Network, an old client of mine. But in this case, they ran this on the platform Civic Shout, which is like a Care2. It's an activist community. In this case, it is an action. You're sending someone straight to a letter to Congress action rather than sending them to a petition. You can do something similar on places like Daily Kos, But the goal here is to grow your list, get someone to take an action, yes, but also to grow your list. And so, here we are. We've got paid petitions, we've got, um, links to petitions on your own website, paid links. You've got lead generation ads, and the if we're tracking where people come from over time, we can measure the cost per acquisition for each channel and know what's going to work best for us. So I wanted to show one quick example of a media takeover. From the Washington Post a few years ago. I remember Maria Butina, who I think now, after getting out of American prison, is in the Russian parliament. The Planned Parenthood, when I did the screenshot, had done a homepage takeover of the Washington Post front page. So just about every ad slot on that front page related to that no gag rule ad you see over there. So there would have been a huge banner across the top. There would have been another big banner, further down the page. Sidebar ads would have included the no gag rule ads. My friend who placed this says that, yes, this was as expensive as you might expect. But for local media sites, it may be much, much cheaper. So especially running down ballot is something you might want to consider, but buy early to freeze the other side out. Final example I'll give, this is a hometown project that I've worked with for the past few years. I've gotten to do their paid digital distribution. So they recruit celebrities who grew up in targeted state legislative districts. They go into a state and get a state partner. In this case, our partner was the Michigan Democratic Party. And they script videos for these celebrities, these or energizers, they call them, for these folks to record. They script the videos for these folks to record for the down ballot Democrats. In that case, it was a Democrat running for state ledge. So we had targeted content for each district. We put them out on video, and some years banner ads, some years not, depending on the budget and the needs. But CTV, this past year, we were using YouTube in some districts where we had a really big budget. Sometimes we would target custom audiences from the voter file exports. Other times we would be using the voter file built in to one of or into the programmatic platform we were using. And then again, I'm trying to get to 15 to 25 or even 30 repetitions per targeted voter. So we'd be hitting them from many, many different angles. And the idea of the celebrity is that, people who might be tuning out politics entirely might still pop up if a celebrity who has a local connection appears. Oh man, my cousin went to high school with them, that kind of thing. So thank you so much for staying with me through this. I know this is a lot of information to take in. I'm going to see if we get any more questions popping up before I end the chat, but I would love to hear from you. So epolitics.substack.com, I'm publishing regularly now best practices and ideas for the field, particularly ideas for how Democrats can adapt to a changing media environment. My friend Will Robinson is also doing some good content there, and I've linked to it from the most recent posts over on Epolitics. And epolitics.com is still around, and it is going to be, it and the Substack will be mirroring each other. So I don't see any new questions, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here. But again, I want to thank all of y'all. And please let me know if I can help out with anything. I'm always happy to chat for a few minutes about your particular campaign or your particular issue and how digital can fit into it. Oh, we get a chat here. Let's see if we get a question popping up. Thank you so much. Now the question is it smart to pay for the social ads as you're building lists? And it can be, right? It is, social ads are one way to build that list. Now you're going to want to, I actually have an entire training on list building. So that may be a good place to go to next. It's on my YouTube channel, and I'll include a link to I'll include a link to that training when I send the follow-up email. But, social ads are maybe the lowest barrier to entry paid list building tools. right? Now, a Civic Shout or a Care 2 may also be a good option. You can go approach them directly. But for most of us, Facebook is probably going to be the most approachable, intuitive, and straightforward way to start. And especially because if you have something like a list of donors now or a list of volunteers now, you can upload that list and then create a lookalike audience based on it, and then try to target people who are similar to the people on your list. But that's a really good question, and I encourage you to if you go to epolitics.com or epolitics.substack.com, the most recent post, I believe, has a link either directly to the list building video or it has a link to my YouTube channel where the list building video lives. All right, well, we are at time now. So thank you again, and I look forward to hearing from y'all in the future. And thank you, as always, for joining.